One mitzvah is the mitzvah of mishloach manot.
Do you not want the camera? I could tilt it a little.
And the second mitzvah is the mitzvah of matanot levyonim. Mishloach manot and matanot levyonim.
Perfect, 'cause I have a question on mishloach manot.
Oh, brilliant! So let's start. Well, let's learn together with your permission, and then we'll see if it's relevant. And then afterwards, we're going to add a little piece to connect mishloach manot, matanot levyonim, to connect them to the Seudat Purim at the end. That's really our plan. Cool. What's your question?
My question is this: if you know that there's going to be a gathering of multiple people in one building, and you bring a large basket with many items from mishloach manot, with the intention that each person can have at least 2 items, do you fulfill your obligation of mishloach manot to more than one person, or do you have to give 2 baskets?
Oh, that's an excellent question. You have to, as we will discuss. I really hope you'll have a good answer to your question at the end of the shiur. It doesn't work. And then at the end of the shiur, Be'ezrat Hashem, you'll explain to everybody why that wouldn't work. Is that okay? Okay, we're going to start with the source. The source of it is from the end of Megillat Esther. Right at the end of Megillat Esther, where Mordechai is really establishing this incredible festival, Lidorot. So if you have a look right at the end. Last week we looked on the same parak when we're talking about the difference between the 14th and the 15th. But now if we look at the mitzvot, Kayamim, on verse 22, Kayamim kafbet, Kayamim asher nachu ba'em ha'yudim mi'oiveihem, v'chodesh, and the month, asher nehefach lahem miyagon, if it switched from despair, l'simcha, to joy, u'me'evel, and from mourning, liyom tov, to become a festival. Now, these are very important words here. La'asot otam yemei mishteh v'simcha. We make these days, meaning the 14th and the 15th of Adar, we make them into days of feasting and celebration. And now look at this. U'mishloach manot ish l're'ehu. Mishloach manot, passing of manot, are portions. Sending portions from one person to another. Matanot le'evyonim, and gifts to the poor. Now, if we have a look over in the Shulchan Aruch, really there's these psukim are very, very clear. The Gemara explains it, but then we've gone straight to the Shulchan Aruch. Source number 2 is talking about matanot le'evyonim, and then source number 3 is mishloach manot. The apostle mentions mishloach manot, so let's start with that one. Is that okay? Can you see this? Source number 3, chayav lishloach lechaveiro. You need to pass on to somebody else shtei manot, 2 portions of basar, or shel minei ochlim, or any other food. Yeah, it needs to be prepared food. So you can't, for example, you couldn't give tea bags. I mean, you could.
Or like a raw steak.
Or a raw steak, for example. Excellent. Yeah, that would be an issue. Yes, that would be an issue. Although I'm just thinking to myself out loud that a raw steak, some people eat steaks, which are basically raw. No?
They still have to put it on the fire for 2 minutes.
Yes, is that right? So, but you're right. It has to be items of food that you're able to eat immediately, and 2 portions thereof. Notice the best way to discuss to know if it's 2 portions is if you make a different brachah on each of the portions. So that's the point, is 2 different, shtei manot means 2 portions of food, 2 different food items. And the easiest way for you to know that they are 2 food items is if they are different brachot. But it's not about making 2 brachot, it's about having 2 different foods. You follow? That's just an easy measure of if it's 2 different foods. Okay, Shnei Mar, and then he quotes a verse that we just saw, Perek Tet Kafbet, Umishloach manot ish l're'ehu. Shtei manot le'ish echad. 2 items of food to 1 person. Now look at this. This is very, very interesting. V'chol amar be'lishloach l're'im meshupach. The more people you are able to send to, the better. Meaning that the minimum is 2 portions to 1 person, but if you're able to send to more people, that's fantastic. Now this is lovely. I love this point over here. V'im ein lo. Let's say somebody hasn't got unfortunately, they're not blessed with the means to give somebody else food. So do you know what you do? You meet somebody else who's also struggling to give to somebody else, and then you give your food to them, and they give their food to you. Now, the net result is the same. Each of you have got a meal, but you've both been involved in this mitzvah of mishloach manot, and you've both managed to become givers through the mishloach manot. Hear that? That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Machliv im chaviro, ze sholech leze seudato, v'ze sholech leze seudato, kedei lekayem mishloach manot ish l're'ehu. Okay, that is the first point. I just want to add one point, and that is, I'm not sure, I hope I didn't mention this last week, there is a fantastic charity here in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh that utilizes the opportunity of mishloach manot to give to people that really have very little. Did I mention this last week? And when they give out these portions of food, they give out, each person gets this parcel of food, but the parcel of food that I get splits into two separate parts. So it's like 2 things of flour, 2 things of oil, 2 things of basic needs, whatever it is, so that the person who receives it can take one mishloach manot for themselves, but it allows them to be a giver and to give the other one to somebody else. Isn't that a beautiful idea? That's taking chesed to the next level. So not only is it providing me with what I need, yet it's allowing me to be a giver on Purim, which is such a thoughtful way to give mishloach manot. But what the Shulchan Aruch is talking about is slightly different, where people just exchange the food, but it's an opportunity to create re'ut with other people. Is that clear? Okay, now I want to look very quickly at the Mishnah of the Ramah, that is Rav Moshe Isserles. He adds, "V'yesh l'shloach manot bayom v'lo balayla." The mitzvah is to send mishloach manot during the daytime and not during the nighttime. Now we will see this next piece is quite important. Im sholech manot l're'ehu v'hu eino rotzeh lekabla, or mochel lo yatsa. This is interesting. Let's say I want to give somebody else, and I knock on their door. I mean, it's a terrible thing. Oy vavoy. Imagine this. You knock on the door and you say, you say to them, Purim Sameach, and you bring up this beautiful mishloach manot.
They slammed the door.
Yeah, isn't that terrible? And they don't accept it. So if they don't accept it, it doesn't matter. I have fulfilled the mitzvah of mishloach manot. Because the mishloach manot, now that's a very, very interesting idea, because I haven't actually given them anything. But in mishloach manot, it's less about the content. It's more about this creating re'ut. This guy knows that I wanted to give him mishloach manot, and through that, I fulfill the mitzvah of mishloach manot. Now, you can't, if he was out, and then he said, I was going to drop in, but you weren't at home, that doesn't work. Meaning, it's not only through thought that you're a yotzei, but in the situation where he didn't accept it, I fulfilled my mitzvah. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Isha chayevet, a woman is chayevet to give, a man is chayav to give too. In general, men give to men, and women give to women in terms of mishloach manot. Okay, that's the din of mishloach manot. Joy, happiness, questions? Yes.
I noticed that she says manot basar, and I'm actually a big fan of this, giving food that is meant to be eaten at the seudah, as opposed to like Laffy Taffy in a chocolate bar, which most people do. Now I understand it's hard. Not everyone's like making food all the time, but I think an ideal mishloach would be, food for the seudah. It doesn't have to necessarily be meat, but anything, even a tray of rice or whatever, something. So I want to ask Rav, what do you think is like an ideal? Your opinion?
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, because if you have a look at the people that have nothing, zeh sholech lo seudato v'zeh sholech lo seudato. The food that you're sending is supposed to be wholesome, like meal food, not sort of. Yeah, not nosh. Is nosh an English thing? Do you know what nosh is?
Yeah, it's a Yiddish word.
Like Yiddish.
Oh, see, but it made it across the pond. Oh, did it? Oh, my, good for that. That's a weight off my mind. Yes, yes.
For mitzvah d'Rabbanan, that its origin is d'Rabbanan. Usually, so for most mitzvot, we have the bichtav, and then we have Baal Peh that explains to us the intricacies and the details and the yeses and the nos. When we have a mitzvah that's instituted by the Rabbanan, how exactly, where does the Shulchan Aruch get all of these intricacies from? How do you know? There's no Torah Baal Peh.
There is. There's a Gemara Megillah, Masechet Megillah. Yeah, it's all the rabbis use the same. They use the psukim of this Megillah in order to establish the halachot. But your question is a better question on Chanukah, where there is no text.
Right.
There's no text in Tanakh on Chanukah.
So where do we get all these halachot?
Yeah, we'll have to leave that question. There is a Gemara. There is the Gemara. There is the Gemara in Shabbat. In the second parak of Shabbat, there's about 2 dapim on Chanukah, and one of the big questions that's discussed in those 2 Gemaras is where Heichan Tzivanu, when will we command it with this mitzvah? How are the laws of Hanukkah established? But that's a fascinating topic, and really wouldn't do justice in a 2-minute answer now.
Valid answer.
Huh?
It's a good answer.
But we'll discuss it. I would love to discuss it more with you at another time.
Sounds good.
I have a question. Is there anything against extending like the what's it called, like the mishloach manot to like parents or family, like siblings?
No, it's good.
No, that's good.
It's good,
because
right?
you're trying to create if you have the truth is, if you look in sources number 4 and 5, if you have a look over here, we see that Haman describes the Jewish people as Am Mefuzar Umufurat Bein Ha'amim. Mefuzar means scattered, Mufurat is separated, right? That's how he sees the Jewish people. And then Esther, when she appeals to Mordechai to daven on her behalf, she tells to Mordechai, Lech knos et kol hayudim, bring them all back together again, meaning the Am were mefuzar u'mefurat and want to try to bring Am Yisrael back together again. So the mishloach manot is part of that effort to create ahava, achva, shalom, rayut, to create a rayut, really between Jews. And Dafka, I would give my mishloach manot, like to push yourself a bit. Do you know what I mean by that? Like push your boundaries. Oh, as you might know, from Michtav Miliau, he has a beautiful kuntras about. Have you got to kuntras HaChesed about love and giving?
I'm not sure, maybe.
So he has a debate. He has a question there, but it's relevant here as well. Do I love her and then I buy her flowers, or do I buy her flowers and then I come to love her? So you would generally think that it's, I love her, that's why I'm going to buy her flowers. But Michtav Eliyahu wants to suggest that it is giving that draws me closer to somebody else. Or more precisely, as he puts it, investing. To give to somebody else is investing of my resources. It could be my time, it could be my money, it could be many things. But when I invest in you, that draws me closer to you. You follow what I mean? So, mishloach manot, when I give to you, so that's strengthening this bond. So, dafka the people, it's rude to give sort of, I know if you give 5 mishloach, it's very hard here because you don't know who to give to. Yeah. But like to give to sort of 3 people, and then some people would send dafka to the people I know less. But it seems a shame then to sacrifice my closer friends. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. But it's quite an interesting balance to decide to whom to give. Yeah. It might be nice to give to people that you think may not get, because you're trying to create a world of re'ut. Okay. So I would think out of my box a little bit. Also, logistically, traffic is a nightmare on Purim, so you also want to give near. Anyway, yes.
I was gonna say, like in a yeshiva, it's very difficult because if you're friendly
You want to give to everyone.
3 dozen people in a yeshiva, you're not gonna be able to logistically or financially give.
No, it's very easy. You get mishloach manot, you give it to the next one.
You just recycle that.
Yeah, exactly. But it happened last year. Like in the end, like I got something back that I gave to somebody else.
Love that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's very difficult. Good luck in negotiating that. Are there?
Some people will get offended, and some people.
Yeah, the truth is, can I just tell everybody here, the point of it is to create re'ut. That's the point of mishloach manot. It would be a terrible thought. I mean, I know you can't help human nature, but it would be a terrible thought if I were to hold a grudge against somebody for not receiving from that person, because all they're trying to do is to create re'ut. And obviously our re'ut is so strong that it wasn't necessary. You follow? Yeah. It would be a terrible thing for me to feel a grudge against somebody that didn't give me, because, I don't know, they would feel terrible if they knew that. All they're trying to do is to create re'ut.
I know a family in the States that their way of doing mishloach manot was very simple. Instead of going crazy and trying to hunt down all of their friends, they would pull the grill out and they would put the grill in the front of the house and they would barbecue all day long. People would come to bring the mishloach manot and stay for a hot dog. And so that way, you got
that's so cute
from them, and anyone who wants to bring them mishloach manot can do so.
You're doing the mitzvah, yeah.
Interesting.
You give him a Sprite and a steak.
Yeah.
But the truth is, on this point of mishloach manot ish l're'ehu, as the pasuk tells us, it shouldn't. It's very, very nice. First of all, the person you're giving to should know it's from you. And in an ideal world, you should write to X from Y, because it's not like you're the first person I bumped into. I'm giving it to you. It's nice for somebody to know that yesterday I was at the shop and I was looking at my budget and seeing how much I can spend, and I decided that I want to give to you. So I'm going to write, dear so and so, Happy Purim from Yisrael. That's a much nicer way to do it, because it's a lechatchila. It's lechatchila rather than if you come, or if you happen. So I think that it's very nice to actively choose and to give rather than see what happens. Is that clear? Okay, that's on the topic of mishloach manot. Matanot l're'ehu, matanot le'avionim, is in source number 2, earlier on in the same siman. It says like this: Chayav kol adam litein lefachot shtei matanot lishnei aniyim. Like to give 2 gifts to 2 people in need. Ein meshanim maot purim litzdaka acheret. Meaning it only goes to people in need. V'davka hakabaim. Aval ha'ani yachol lasot bo ma sheyirtzeh. Meaning you have to give it as ma'or for Purim, but the person who receives it doesn't need to spend it on Purim.
In the Megillah, it mentions first the mishloach manot and then matanot avionim, and here we're looking at first.
Yes, spot. Very interesting. Well, that's such an excellent question. I don't have an answer. That's an excellent observation. But I just want to tell you another wonderful chesed project that my brother is involved in. And he helps some people in Yerushalayim who are in need of financial assistance. But it can be quite embarrassing to receive financial assistance. This goes to like our chesed thing earlier. So what his organization does is they create quite basic mishloach manot, but at the bottom of the mishloach manot they put an envelope with some cash in it. So then when I deliver the mishloach manot to the family, like everybody else, are receiving this mishloach manot. But when they unpack it, it turns out that actually it was matanot le'avionim. There's such a tasteful way to give matanot le'avionim. You follow?
It should be more like if someone stretches his hand to you.
Yeah. Right. So that's a din, it's a minhag on Purim. Kol ha'poshet yado notnim lo. Anyone that asks for money on Purim, you should give them.
And it's fine to do it to like a middleman?
Yes. Okay. Absolutely. Now, there's a difference. In fact, one of the critical differences between mishloach manot, matanot le'evyonim. In mishloach manot, I want to write, dear Shloimele from Yisrael. But for the matanot le'evyonim, I want to know who I'm giving it to. But I want to give it anonymously. I don't want them to know it was from me. You follow? So that's there's for obvious reasons, I'm trying to do very different things. Yes.
So matanot, mishloach manot, you give to two people.
Ken. No, to one person. You at least one person. Two items, one person.
To one person.
For mishloach manot.
And for matanot le'evyonim.
To two people. But you may not give. You may give a sum of money. You give a sum of money to the Bet Knesset, and the Bet Knesset will say, "We don't give two sums of money, but your sum of money should be your plan is to go to Matanot Le'evyonim exactly." Okay. Ein medaktikim b'ma'or Purim ela kol mi sheposhet yado. Anyone, this is what Shushan was saying, liton notnim lo, uvimkom shenagu liten af la'akum notnim. And in places where there is a custom to give to non-Jews, you can fulfill the mitzvah in giving not just to Jews, but you can give to non-Jews as well, for matanot le'evyonim. So you have two different mitzvot. You have mishloach manot, which is to you to create re'ut, to create friendship, and matanot le'evyonim is just simply caring for people in society who are in need. Joy? Okay. Now, what I'd like to do, it's a lovely, lovely question. In fact, we're going to look at a tshuva now from the Sridei Eish. The truth is, before we get to the Sridei Eish, on the other side, on the back of the page, I did a chart. But you follow that it's the summary. What we said, matanot le'evyonim, is two gifts to two people, but they shouldn't know who it's from. Mishloach manot is two gifts to one person, but they should know it's from you. There's no sneers in not, because I'm trying to create friendship between me and him. But if he doesn't know who gave him, so it never worked. He has to know that I thought about you and I wanted to give this to you.
I got one not last year, a few years ago, where I wasn't home, and then I came home, and my mother was like, "Oh, one of your friends stopped by." I was like, "Who was it?" She's like, "I don't know." I want to know who.
Oh no!
I didn't have one of those notes.
Do you know now? Do you still?
I still don't know.
Oh no, that was terrible.
That's great, because now you can assume that all your friends brought you mishloach manot.
That's such a holy story. You're right. Yeah, don't rule anybody out. Absolutely. Okay. I wanted there's a very, very interesting halachic debate, dafka on mishloach manot, and a beautiful, beautiful teaching from the Sridei Eish. Sridei Eish is a rabbi called Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg. He lived through the Second World War, and after the Second World War he lived in Switzerland. I think he passed away in the 1950s, maybe the 1960s. He's a Holocaust survivor, which is why he called his book Sridei Eish, which is sort of a remnants from the fire in Europe. This is one of his well-known responsum. He asks, why is it that we don't make a brachah on mishloach manot? It's one of the mitzvot hayom. One of the mitzvot of the day of Purim. We make a brachah on the Megillah, but we don't make a brachah on mishloach manot. Now, matanot le'evyonim is like tzedakah. On tzedakah, you can't make a brachah before you give tzedakah, because if I were to give tzedakah to somebody and then find out, that's so kind of you, they say to me, but actually just a minute ago I won the lottery. So they're no longer... So I wanted to fulfill the mitzvah, but it's possible that between...
but matanot le'evyonim is mi'al tzedakah. It's not the same as tzedakah.
No, but it's also providing for people.
It's not the same mitzvah as tzedakah.
Correct.
Could ask the same question.
No, because I think there, in both of those situations, in order for me to fulfill the... No, in order for it.
From your tzedakah stash.
Correct, yeah, it's not connected to tzedakah, but the person I'm giving to has to be an oni, has to be somebody in need. And if that person turns out not to be in need, so then that's tricky. But mishloach manot isn't dependent. There's nothing on his part that could prevent me from fulfilling the mitzvah. As we saw in the Shulchan Aruch, even if he doesn't accept it, I still fulfill the mitzvah. And therefore, that which prevents me from making the bracha on matanot le'evyonim, because he has to be an evyon, that limitation that exists in matanot le'evyonim doesn't exist in mishloach manot. So the question is, why don't I make a bracha on mishloach manot? Before we get, well, as you pondered that, your question, Shushan, reminded me of a story. It's such a sweet story that I heard from a rabbi in my neighborhood. He's the rabbi of a very affluent community in Jerusalem. As you know, there are some neighborhoods in Jerusalem that people are really blessed with quite a lot of money. And he collected thousands and thousands of shekels. I mean, I don't know if it was hundreds of thousands, but at least, I don't know, 50,000, 60,000 shekel, a huge, huge sum of money that he collected on Purim. And every time he was about to leave to deliver the mishloach manot, somebody else came and gave him another sort of amount of money. And you have to give the money on Purim. On Purim. So the sun is going down, and he's got this huge amount of money, and he himself, this rabbi of the community, is a recent oleh. So he didn't know exactly, what the organizations are. He only knows, I've got 45 minutes and I have to get rid of, 50,000 shekel, which is interesting. So he decided to go to the central bus station in Yerushalayim and to see if there's somebody there that needs help, and I'll help them. So he went to the central bus station and he saw a guy, and he's walking over to this guy. The guy's lying down on the ground, and he's thinking, I've got 50,000 shekel in my hands. I'm about to change this person's life. I mean, imagine that. Those final steps as he's approaching the guy. He arrives at the guy, and he gives him the envelope. And he's expecting a hug. He's expecting a cry. He's expecting this. I mean, he sort of built it up in his mind. And the guy sort of just like shrugs. And it's really such a letdown. I was getting so excited. So I've just given away 50,000 shekel. And the guy goes, oh, thanks. Anyway, he was walking away. And then, sort of just before he, gets into his car, he looks back and he sees the guy counting the money, and he's looking up in the sky and he's crying and crying. And he realizes, I was just a shaliach. Do you know what I mean? Like, I happen to know a couple, but I was just a shaliach. But really it was from the Eibishter. I like that. Anyway. Okay, so now let's go to the Sridei Eish. The Sridei Eish, asking the question of why I don't make a bracha on mishloach manot. Source number 4. He says like this: but Purim, this Purim, hiruharti, I wondered, b'kushiyat ha'achronim, the rabbis ask, lama ein mevarachina mishloach manot? Why don't we make a bracha on mishloach manot? Now, he says, the Rashba, Rav Shlomo ben Aderet says, She'ein mevarchin ala tzedakah, shemen lo yikabel. In the mitzvah of tzedakah, you don't make a bracha. When you give to a person who's not well, not in need, I don't know, I don't fulfill the mitzvah because it's dependent on them accepting the charity, not dependent on me giving, right? Harei gabe mishloach manot yotzin af im me'ino mekabel. Here we see that I am the only player here. You follow? In other mitzvot where it's dependent on the guy accepting it, I can't make a bracha that's dependent on him for me to fulfill my mitzvah. I can't make a bracha that is dependent on you. You follow? Because maybe you won't play along. And then I will have made a brachah levatala. But a mitzvah that is entirely dependent on me, mishloach manot, why don't I make a bracha? So he says, שאין כוונה דאיקה למך השם לא יקבל ותהי ברכה לבטל דמה יאמר למי שנותן לעני ומבקש נדבה אלא כוונתו שאין מברכין המצווה שאינה תלויה בעושה המצווה לבדו אלא גם באחר ואפשר שמטעם זה אין מברכים על נתינת תרומה לכהן אף שגם הנתינה היא מצווה כמו שהפרישה עליה שההפרשה שעליה מברכים. Okay, so that's what we've said until now. I can only make a bracha on something which is dependent entirely on me, because then I can be sure that whatever I'm making a bracha on will happen. But I can't make a bracha on you lighting Hanukkah candles, because, I don't know, maybe you'll fall asleep between me making the bracha and you lighting it. I can only make a bracha that's based entirely on me. And that would explain why, yes for mishloach manot, but no for tzedakah. So why do we not make a bracha on mishloach manot? So he gives a different reason why we don't make a bracha on tzedakah and why we don't make a bracha on matanot levyonim. Oh no, mishloach manot, I'm sorry. V'ordinarily, this he gives two reasons and they're both beautiful. Shemishloach manot hi laharbot shalom va'ava v'reut. The purpose of doing mishloach manot is to create friendship between people. But mishloach manot tov sheyitain miritzono hachofshi mitoch regesh shel ahava le'echav ha'ivri ve'im hu noten rak al pi tzivui hu mafchit b'midat ha'ahava. So he says an amazing idea. In general, we have a principle. Gadol ha-metzuva ve'oseh mi she'enu metzuva ve'oseh. Do you know what that means? That if I'm commanded to do the mitzvah, I get a greater reward than if I do it, even if I had not been commanded for it. So we have a mitzvah of Shabbat. When I keep Shabbat because God commanded me to keep Shabbat, that is a greater Shabbat observance than somebody who keeps Shabbat because that they feel that that's what, that is God's will. You follow? Me, I have to, when I do something because it is God's will, because God told me to do it, my performance of the mitzvah is superior to my performance of the same act, but because I wanted to do it rather than I'm doing it because God told me to do it. You follow? Gadol ha-metzuvev yoseh, to be commanded to do it is a greater fulfillment of the mitzvah than if I did it of my own accord. That's a general principle. But then, and this is a brilliant idea of the Sritei Eish, he says there are some mitzvot for which that principle does not apply. So we'll say for tefillin, nachon? Let's say I put on my tefillin because I want to put on tefillin. Not because God commanded me to put them on, but I love the idea of having these parchment on my, Shema Yisrael. So I don't get to the same appreciation, the same I don't internalize the mitzvah to the same extent if I do it of my own accord, as opposed to if I do it as a command from Hashem. It is better to do it as a commanded individual rather than on a whim. Is that clear? However, mishloach manot, if I were to come over to Michael over here and I'll say, and then give you mishloach manot, that would destroy it wouldn't destroy, but it would detract from the re'ut. You follow? So in general, my mitzvah will be elevated because God commanded me to do it. But in this mitzvah, my mitzvah would be decreased if I did it because I was commanded to do it. I want to give to Michael because even Shushan. I want to.
Michael could say bracha.
You're good.
Especially if you get a nice bottle.
Wow, you're good.
That's good wine.
Yes, you're right.
Because it's for you both, but
yes, but you're right. The receiver could make a bracha on that which he received. But if I, the giver, were to turn it into a ritual, it would reduce the value of the mitzvah. Isn't that brilliant? Because I'm trying to create friendship between us. And by reducing it to a ritual, by making a brachah on it, it would have a pagam on my mitzvah. My mitzvah wouldn't be as great if I would make a brachah on it first. So in general, making a brachah enhances a mitzvah. But the chidush of mishloach manot is the greater mitzvah is the one that I give because I want to give to you rather than because I'm obliged to give it to you today. You follow?
Manot is unique in that, like there's no, like most other mitzvot are not because I want to do. They're more about because they're commandments.
Yeah.
Why
Because
is mishloach manot different from those?
because the point of the mitzvah is to create re'ut.
How do we know that?
Because the Torah tells, because it's because the Megillah mentions that. Mishloach manot ish l're'ehu. That we're doing it in order to give mishloach manot ish l're'ehu. It's where the focus is on re'ut, and the re'ut between us would be weakened if this mitzvah was a ritual. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
I think it's
Like
brilliant.
Paraduma, where it's a ritual and you have no clue why you're doing it, but you're doing it because you were commanded to. Like,
Did you learn Likutei Halachot with that? Well, how did you connect the Paraduma?
what?
How did you connect the Paraduma?
Because
Oh.
we're saying there's a difference between
Yeah, no,
mitzvah
no.
that you're doing because you're commanded to do it, even if you don't know the reason. And the biggest example of that is Paraduma. It makes no sense to kill a red cow and throw its blood on a guy, and now he's
No,
tahor.
but the same thing was written in Likutei Halachot. That's why.
I think
No,
a better example would be a mitzvah that could be interpreted either way.
Oh,
Like giving tzedakah. I'm giving tzedakah because it feels good and I, feel like a great guy giving tzedakah, or I'm doing it because it's a mitzvah.
so the truth, he does give another example. But your timing could not have been better. In the end of this, he gives two reasons. So in the end of the longer paragraph, 4 lines up from the end of the middle paragraph on the second page, do you see a new sentence begins with the words Ve'efshar?
Yeah.
So he writes Ve'efshar, this is mamash for you, Menachem Pesach. Ve'efshar shemikut shum kach ein mevarachim al kibbut avoim. The same rationale would apply for kibbut avoim. I respect my parents because they are wonderful, because they brought me into the world, and I will always be grateful for the years of investment in me.
You can also hate your parents, but you are obliged to respect them.
But in any event, whatever my relationship with my parents, turning my treatment of my parents into a ritual by making it into a bracha would reduce the relationship. You follow? And therefore,
You don't say a bracha on respecting your parents.
correct, exactly. This sounds another example.
Hip hop, so let me just say a bracha real quick, then we'll have a conversation.
Thank you, Pinchas, you put that so well. ובזה נראה לי לפשוט ספקם של האחרונים עם כופין על משלוח מנות, כמו שכופין על הצדקה שמשלוח מנות על ידי כפייה אינה כלום. ושאני צדקה תהתם אני מבקש לכם להסביר רבעונו. So there's no pressure in mishloach manot, meaning I have to give because I want to give. You follow? Tzedakah, sometimes, I'm not a fundraiser myself, but there's pressure to give more. There's no pressure to give mishloach manot. Because if you felt under pressure to give mishloach manot, you wouldn't be giving it out of re'ut, you'd be giving it out to something else, and you wouldn't be achieving the mitzvah. Is that clear to everybody? A beautiful, beautiful insight into mishloach manot, that the essence, the bracha here would lower the level of the mitzvah, and that's why we don't make a bracha. In general, a bracha, gadola mitzvah v'yoseh, misha'enu mitzvah v'yoseh. In general, the bracha is what enhances the mitzvah. For mishloach manot, that's not the case. Then he gives a second reason. This is absolutely beautiful. V'od nir'a li lechadesh. I would like to add, and this is very, very important. Shemishloach manot hi be'emet mitzvah timidit b'chol hashana. Mishloach manot isn't a mitzvah to give to create friendship between myself and my friends. To buy a friend a chocolate, or to buy them a meal, or to look after somebody else, not because they need it, because I want to give it to you. That's not a mitzvah just for Purim. It's a mitzvah that we could fulfill every day. Now, it doesn't have to be the precise, and not with all the wrapping paper, and you wouldn't need to put Purim Sameach on it. But the idea of giving a gift to somebody else, not because they need it, but because you're a wonderful person, I want to acknowledge our friendship, that is a mitzvah that I could do every single day. Well, then those things that I'm commanded to do all the time, we don't make a brachah on them. Rak b'Purim nitzavenu l'kayim b'fol mitzvah zu. On Purim, we are commanded to do. You have to do on Purim. But why do we do it on Purim? Kadeshin is kol b'chol hashana. Meaning, I do it on Purim not because this is the day for mishloach manot, but because to remember that re'ut aspect of my life is something that is worth investing in, and I'm going to make sure that I invest in it on Purim in the hope that if I invest in it on Purim, I will then remember to invest in it all the rest of the year. You follow? So it's not a Purim-centric mitzvah. Because it's not a Purim-centric mitzvah, so I don't make a bracha on it. I only make a bracha on Hanukkah lights because I light them only on Hanukkah. But if I was lighting a Chanukiah every day, I wouldn't make a bracha on lighting the Hanukkah lights. So the mitzvah mishloach manot isn't a Purim-centric mitzvah. It is a mitzvah every single day. Purim is the annual reminder to be a good friend.
Wow.
That's that. That's the second point. Joy, happiness. Oh, I'm so good. If you're happy.
No, I'm always happy with you.
Excellent. Any questions, any ha'arot, any comments so far?
So you mentioned that there's this organization that people do, a charity organization, and they donate to, and then they give out mishloachim.
Yes.
So if I donate to this organization, would that cover both matanot yovelim and mishloach manot?
No, because you have to know the person you're giving mishloach manot to.
Oh, that's right.
But if I knew them, then
I know.
No, but they try.
They don't know that it's coming from me, but I know that I'm giving. I don't know. It's only halfway.
That's a very. Your question is excellent. It can't work because what makes the best mishloach manot is what makes the worst matanot levyonim. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah.
So it's a separate. Okay.
Yeah, because your question is so good, so in place. Because I can see they're two totally different ideas. Matanot Levionim is to care about Am Yisrael, to make sure that people are taken care of. But Mishloach Manot is to create Re'ut. I'm not giving because you need, I'm giving because I want to give to you. Because you're a very wonderful person.
So you can't give money for both?
No.
You should give food.
No, the Mishloach Manot has to be food. Okay. Joy, any comments, any questions? I want to add sort of the icing on this beautiful cake that we've just made, and we'll then deliver. Huh?
Talking about all this food, and now you're talking about icing and cake.
I'm sorry.
Wait for the cherries on top.
You're good. You're quite right. Okay, I want to draw your attention to a very, very interesting phrase in the Megillah. We read the verse that we've been spending our time on really the whole time over here is the mitzvah of Mishloach Manot Matanot Re'eu, appear Perek Tet Pasuk Kafbet, chapter 9, verse 22. Prior to the section that's underlined that we were looking at, the words immediately before that say that Purim is a day la'asot otam yimei mishteh v'simcha, to make them into days of celebration. Nachon, feasting and joy. Now, I was talking to somebody saying it could have been when we were learning that Purim is actually a very, very tricky day in terms of celebration. Yeshiva, you are so, so blessed because you have a timetable, you've got a schedule, you know how to lenavet your excitement. People outside of Yeshiva often struggle on Purim, and the language in the Megillah is very unusual, because the Megillah doesn't say we have a mitzvah to be happy on Purim. It says we have a mitzvah la'asot simcha. La'asot simcha means to create joy. Now, contrast that with the celebration on the Chagim, where we are told v'samachta b'chagecha, not v'ta'asu simcha b'chagecha, ela v'samachta b'chagecha. Almost the difference between them. And now I'd like to quote from the Shem Shmuel, but not the one at the bottom of the page, but he's not on the sheet. The Shem Shmuel explains that there's two types of simcha. On a chag, our mitzvah is v'samachta. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has decreed that Sukkot is going to be Zman Simchatenu. All my job on Sukkot is to connect to the Simcha. The Simcha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought into the world. V'samachta b'chagecha. I just need to open myself up and let myself be surrounded by the joy of the Chag. That's my tafkid on Chagim. V'samachta b'chagecha. However, on Purim, it's not v'samachta. On Purim it is lasot otam yimei mishteh v'simcha. There's no God.
You may.
Meaning the
plural.
14th and 15th. Shushan over here.
Yeah.
You may 2 days, the 14th and the 15th. You may nachon. It's here. I can't just sit back and allow the day to bring joy into me. On Purim, I need to create the simcha. And I have to say that it is the greatest gift to have the opportunity to be in yeshiva on Purim, because to know how to be happy, it sounds crazy, is actually a very, very difficult thing to achieve. It's very hard to get up next Wednesday and say, I'm going to be happy today. What am I going to do?
Oh, that's a great view on life.
Huh?
I'm going to be happy today.
Yes, and halavai, it was that easy. He's done it. You did it.
Just did it, Rav. I'm happy.
You're amazing. Well done.
Just did it.
Doral, can you teach us how you did that?
Rav, it's a munah. Munah.
You are so right. You have no idea how right you are. Maybe you do know. Minasam, you do know. That's why you're so happy. Excellent. Good. Now, but how do I create the joy? The Shem Shmuel explains, and I think this is such a beautiful idea. On every other Jewish festival that has a meal, the meal is at the beginning of the festival. So let's say Shabbat, Friday night, straight after Shul, home, Kiddush, and then Sudat Shabbat. Pesach, first night Pesach, Kiddush, straight home, Leil HaSeder. First night Sukkot's just started. First thing we do after Shul, sit in the sukkah, have a meal. The meal on every Chag is at the beginning of the day. In the evening, straight away. Apart from Purim. When's the ideal time for Su'udat Purim?
After Mincha.
After Mincha.
No, after Shacharit.
Mincha.
Shacharit.
The reason is if you're going to be getting
Getting.
You're not going to be doing mitzvot the way that you should be afterward.
No.
So you should do mincha.
The reason you should do it right after Shacharit, because you have Sivli Mochin on you. Because you're hungry.
So the ideal time is to do it Mincha time. No, it doesn't matter.
Maybe it's just a reason that says that.
Yeah.
It's just
yes. No, but I think the Shulchan Aruch talks about doing it after Chatzot.
Okay.
Now, it might be before I've done a Mincha. It may be after I daven mincha, but it's in the afternoon. The ideal time to do the Sudat Purim is after Chatzot in the afternoon. That's when we do the meal, which is odd, because normally it's Zrizim Makdimim LeMitzvah. And here we have a mitzvah, and I'm doing it in the second half of the day. After the Megillah in the evening, there is no big Su'udah in the evening at the beginning of the day. Why? So it explains the Shem Shmuel that on Purim, as opposed to all the other days, the simcha isn't there. I have to create it. La'asot simcha. How do I create the simcha? Mishloach manot.
So it's more important to do mishloach.
Yeah, no. The mitzvot of the day, through my mishloach manot and through my matanot le'evyonim, I generate in myself the simcha with which I can then enter into the Su'udah. You follow? So on Purim, I need la'asot otam yimei mishteh v'simcha not v'samachta b'chagecha. That is connecting with the joy that is already there, but I need to create the joy. How do I create the joy? Through the mitzvot of the day. The last mitzvah of the day is Suda. I do the Megillah. I do mishloach manot. I do matanot le'evyonim. Each one of them, like you sort of demonstrate a minute, as simcha. And then I come through that simcha of the performance of these particular mitzvot, creating that re'ut between me and the people around me, that in that moment, I then enter into the Su'udah. And through that, I've created the simcha. Tim, show me what it said?
I think we learned today that you should give as much money as you spend on your Suda.
Yes.
In food or in gifts to the poor, something like that.
Yes, you're quite right. First of all, it's interesting.
Someone who's not doing their own Su'udah, then they're not going to give any money.
And just mishloach manot.
No. Well, it's interesting because the matanot le'evyonim, when we give matanot le'evyonim is matanot, double. Nachon? Mishloach is to one person. So I'm required to give at least two people, meaning however much I'm going to spend on my mishloach manot for one person, I should spend at least double that on my matanot le'evyonim. You follow? If I spend X, so X, 2X. 2X should be my matanot le'evyonim.
Is there a way to give matanot le'evyonim through the yeshiva?
I'm sure there is. Yeah, almost every shul will collect money after Shacharit. That's the day before. Will be on Monday. That's normally done mincha on the fast day. I mean, maybe Shacharit as well. There's a big yeshiva here, but it's normally done Erev Purim. So here that is Sunday night, Monday. And then Monday night is not Purim. Okay, I want to conclude by wishing us all we should be blessed. I find Purim to be a relatively complicated day. I mean, in the most beautiful, beautiful way. What I mean complicated, I love it. I absolutely love Purim, but I only love it because I prepare. You can't, I think this last is such a powerful idea. I can't rely on Purim to do it for me. You follow? I need to plan. So I need to buy, I need to decide who I'm going to give to. I need to prepare my mishloach manot. Shtickle costume as well. You can prepare all the stuff. And then only when I've done all of those things, then I'm created the simcha with which I can go into the Su'udah. Beseda, Yishar Koach to all of you. It's such an honor and pleasure to learn with you. Tis kula mitzvot.